welcome back to City Skylines and Byerwood. So, on this episode of Byerwood today, I'm going to be continuing working on this neighborhood on the north side of the train tracks. So, in the last episode, I began placing most of these houses that you see over in this area. And if you remember, I just finished on the point where I'm going to be placing a lot more of these houses, of course, and I'm going to be placing different types of houses soon. So I've been reviewing the footage that I do have of Byerwood, and it looks like soon I start getting to some different neighborhoods. So I'm really emphasizing the triple-decker housing right now, but I think it's so that in the future, when I start working with different houses, I'll know it'll justify it for me because I'll have plenty of triple-decker housing and housing of high density already in the city. And if you see these zoomed out shots, it really starts to look like a zoomed out shot of some of the New England cities, especially Worcester and Providence. So I have another parking lot on the other side of this thing, and we're just going to have a couple businesses and some people living on the other side of this. And I know it's not really too nice and too like good of a spot to live, like on the road near the train tracks, but people are going to live there and there are going to be houses there. So yeah, I don't know, I'm just going to stick with that. It's realistic and it's how it actually is. So I wouldn't want to live there, but people do live there and there are housing near there. I want to also put some warehouses near the train tracks, not as if there would be access here because the rail is elevated, a couple stories off the ground, but it's just nice to have some industrial area near train tracks and on the outskirts of neighborhoods. And I really like that little billboard there on that building, and it really is starting to look realistic. The more that I place and fill out, the more that this city just looks like it's actually a real city, and it looks like it's some Google Earth, images from far away. And that was my goal in the end of it. I really wanted it to try to look like a real city, and I did want it to look like my own city, of course, but I also wanted it to look as realistic as possible. So right here, I was going for like a self-storage lot area, but I don't know how well that came out. So one thing I also need to get in this New England city, I need a lot more mills. There are so many mills, not only in Worcester, but in the surrounding towns and in Providence and those surrounding towns like Warwick and Pawtucket. There are mills everywhere. In Fall River, Massachusetts, there are mills everywhere. New England cities are loaded with mills, so I need to start placing a lot more because even though they are mostly abandoned now and not under active operation, they once were, and they hark back to a time where the city was in economic growth, and a lot of mills are in historic areas, so they actually cannot be torn down because you're not allowed to demolish historic buildings in historic districts of cities or towns, because that's the whole ordinance or whatever. So as I start placing some of these mills around the city, I'm finding some really good plots that are left open purposely, I think, honestly, because some of these mills fit so well in the plots that are there for them. Different sizes, different shapes. There's smaller ones where it's more just like a warehouse, but there's also larger ones where it's like rows of them. And a lot of the nation's goods were produced in mills during the nation's, not only the industrial revolution, but a lot deeper into history as well. So I'm now placing some more buildings between these mills, or houses between the mills and the train tracks, and there's going to be a pretty small neighborhood in here between these two. So I want to try to fit a neighborhood in here of a couple streets worth of housing in between the train tracks, the main road, and the mills over here. And I think I'll be able to do it pretty nice because there's a big enough area to fit enough houses to the point where it doesn't look too awkward and out of place. But now we're into the point of the city where it's not really that high density anymore. So right off of the main road, there's going to be triple decker housing, and that's just because we've gotten to the point in the city, and it's not like bigger cities that it stretches for miles of high density. There's really only there's only a few blocks of high density buildings, and the rest of it really starts to dumb down outside of that. And but before you know it, you're out of the city, especially in New England cities like these. Even when they're up over 100,000 people, you're still in and out of these cities. They're not very big.